Warmly welcome to this May's third Miltton Futures discussion. Today we take a look at the European Green Deal, its implications for the businesses in the new Nordics area, and most importantly, how well the businesses are prepared for the Green Deal. My name is Lauri Tierla. I'm a partner and senior advisor at Miltton's Public Affairs team. Welcome again. Our discussion today is very timely since the European Commission is finalizing its proposals on the so-called Fit for 55 package, a set of measures meant to implement the European Green Deal and the headline goal of reducing CO2 emissions in Europe by 55% by the year 2030. These proposals have already inspired a lot of discussion in the media and will most certainly do so in the coming weeks and months. And obviously after the summer break, when the co-legislators, the European Parliament and the member states as the Council get to work on the details, this discussion is certain to heat up. We at Miltton wanted to understand a bit better how the Nordic companies are prepared, so we decided to ask them. In the beginning of this session, I'm going to present some results from a modest survey we did with the companies, and then our invited experts will take the discussion into a deeper level. We invited 100 of Miltton's public affairs clients and friends to participate in the survey. As usual in an online survey, obviously not everyone responded, but we've got a rather good mix of companies responding. The first question, which I think tells a lot about which type of companies we have and which type of countries we are talking about, was whether the company has made a commitment to reduce emissions. And as we can see here, yes, the huge majority of respondents have made some kind of a commitment in all of the countries that we surveyed: Estonia, Finland, and Sweden. I don't think this is a big surprise to any one of us. The second question that we wanted to understand a bit better is how well the companies have been able to participate in the formulation of the policy processes and on which levels. Here, the answers do get, I don't know if more surprising, but perhaps more interesting. We see here that on a local level, the participation has been actually rather low, which makes sense given the nature of these issues. Then, on the national and European level, we see a quite high participation rate. What's striking here to me and our team has been the differences between the three countries, here in the order of Estonia, Finland, and Sweden, where we see that the ratio of Estonian companies participating on the European level discussion is actually rather low, whereas both in Sweden and Finland we are seeing a high number of respondents participating also in the European debate. This is perhaps a question of resources. What are the most important initiatives as part of the Fit for 55 package? Again, no big surprise that reforming the ETS, emission trading system, is number one. The top two, top three, no big surprises here either. What is perhaps a surprise is how low the EU taxonomy here scores here. This is a topic that I at least will be most interested to hear from our invited experts today, how they view the taxonomy, which at least in some countries has been debated quite heatedly in the past weeks and months. Then perhaps for the politicians, I guess the most important question is whether the companies surveyed see the Green Deal as a whole and the reinforced climate emission targets as positive. And here, of course, one can say that it's a question of who has responded to the survey, but we have very, very positive replies here. The mostly positive is the largest bar, but we have a very, very tiny portion of the respondents saying anything negative. Again, here we do see some differences between the countries, especially in Sweden. The number of very positive responses is very high, and when we go one step lower to the mostly positive, there Estonia is the high or largest bar. One can of course draw conclusions here about the effects of the general political and public debate on climate change and how they affect the companies' views as well. So even though we talk about the new Nordics, one has to take into account that the views and attitudes and business perspectives of the companies in the three countries here surveyed are actually a bit different. And then preparations for implementation. How well the companies are actually prepared. Well, for a consultant, this is good news. I don't know if for a civil servant or for a politician or for a business leader, this is such good news. I mean, obviously, yes, we have a well-prepared at 25%, but the relatively well-prepared at 52% tells me that there definitely is an amount of unease, even though we are already very, very close to the actual Commission proposals. Obviously, these proposals will take time to be negotiated over and approved and come into force, but still, it tells us that there's a lot of work to be done within the companies for them to be prepared to participate in the debate, in the public debate about the proposals, and once they are decided by the policymakers, by the European Parliament and the Council, to actually get ready to implement them. Again, here we do see some differences between the three countries. The well-prepared it's actually a bit striking that Estonia is missing from the well-prepared section, and 71% of respondents from Estonia are in the relatively well-prepared. One can always speculate that this has something to do with how we answer surveys differently in different member states and so forth, and national cultures, and definitely so. But we're quite certain that there is also a more meaningful truth here behind these numbers, in that there is still work to be done with several Estonian companies in getting ready for the implementation once it's done. These are just a few general remarks, and the survey we did is by no means a scientific one, and we don't want to present it as such. But these key takeaways are, however, quite interesting. We have a lot of open answers as well that our experts today have also seen, and hopefully will help them in digging deeper into the numbers and their true meaning. For me, these results give a lot of reason for optimism. That in general, the view of the Nordic companies is positive, and we are, apart from a few sectors which may vary country by country, which we have already seen in the media, there will not most likely be a general outcry, but there is a general level of commitment to the rather ambitious climate goals. How this will be done in practice and what it will mean in detail, I will now invite on stage virtually my colleague Lotta Nyman-Lindegren from Miltton Europe, and she will be interviewing member of the European Parliament, Mr. Ville Niinistö. Thanks a lot already in advance, Ville, for taking the time to speak with us today. So over to Copenhagen and Brussels, I presume.
Thank you, Lauri, and welcome, Ville. I can only join Lauri by saying that we're extremely happy to have you here with us today. And I think this is an extremely interesting topic also when we look into what's going to happen at the European level in the coming months. Ville, you are, of course, a member of the European Parliament. You are a member of the Environment Committee and the Industry and Research and Energy Committees, and you also sit in the Economic Affairs Committee. But on top of that, you're, of course, a former Minister for Environment and a chair of the Green Party. So you've been really looking at this issue of green policies and the industry from a lot of different angles. If after you've heard the presentation by Lauri, is there something that surprised you with these results? What is it that makes you think when you hear this kind of a presentation?
Well, to start with, I'm happy to be here to discuss these issues with you. I'm actually currently in Helsinki, as we are doing a lot of remote working currently in the European Parliament during these times. I would say that the overall answers were positive. It's good that the companies in the Nordics, in all of these countries, see possibilities with the Green Deal, because that's how I see it. The Green Deal as the Commission's main goal for this 5-year period, more or less, you can say that it's their main goal in all of their policies. It is also about creating jobs and competitiveness to Europe by investing into the technological reforms, the innovation systems, and the infrastructure that reducing CO2 emissions entails. So it's not just environmental policy. As a green politician, I'm happy that this environmental aspect is more broadly understood, but it's also about changing the dynamics of economics, that resource efficiency, circular economy, environmental impact comes into the pricing mechanism. You have a proper pricing signal for CO2 emissions and other environmental impacts. So from this viewpoint, it's good that companies are prepared to this and see this as a positive possibility, because that attitude is also, it kind of like, you need to have that in order to see what possibilities and funding mechanisms you can use in the Green Deal. I would say that the most surprising result was also maybe that the taxonomy was so low in the agenda, but at the same time I also agree with what the answers were focused on. I think it's very much the European emission trading scheme, ETS, that is the main tool of emission reductions, and for all companies involved with energy production and industry, this is the main vehicle. So if you are in that chain, that is the biggest thing to look at. But then also Renewable Energy Directive is going to be very important, and most likely I will be personally working with that. So there are a lot of things that can have effects to companies, how sustainability criteria is developed, and how high ambition we have, and how much national bindingness into the targets of renewable energy we have. That will mean a lot of markets for renewable energy. So I would say these two are key also from my view. And taxonomy maybe it affects a bit more the biggest companies, the biggest investments. For those, taxonomy is important, and I guess that's why it has been so much up into the debate. But for smaller companies, it's the other directives that have the main role, because they are also binding, they are legislation, and taxonomy is only guideline for funding, for channeling private funding.
You almost already answered. I wanted to ask you if we had sent this questionnaire to you, and you would have to pick the 3 most important tools for actually promoting climate neutrality. Which ones would you have chosen? And the way I read you is that you say that the ETS and then renewables and taxonomy would be those. If you look at, I mean, you said in the beginning already that this greening of EU policies and this idea of climate neutrality as the new growth strategy really is the most central goal for this present von der Leyen Commission. How would you rate success so far? I mean, How far have we come in implementing this Green Deal? Do you think that we're well on the way, or are there some question marks in the air ahead of the proposals this summer?
Yes, well, I guess also I would maybe add to what you said about the three most important legislative reforms here. It depends on what branch you are as a company. The LULUCF regulation for CO2 emission related carbon sinks will affect more the forestry sector, for example, so that's important there, and land use sector in general. And then energy efficiency directive is a lot more important that people realize, especially if it's going to be more binding than previously. That means a lot of markets for energy efficiency solutions, especially in public buildings, because there is a chance that the Commission will increase the energy efficiency goals of all public buildings. Currently, it's the central government buildings. That's only 1% of the building stock of the EU. But if it would include the local and regional buildings as well, that will be 12% of all buildings. So a lot of markets for energy efficiency solutions there, if there is a binding target for public buildings and their energy efficiency. All in all, so I think to answer your main point here, I think what we need to realize is that all the rules for different sectors are changing. So from that viewpoint, I'd say that the Commission has insofar promised a lot. Their ambition when it comes to 2030 target is high. Climate law is ambitious. The stimulation funding from the recovery and resilience facility is ambitious. But the question now is that how much they will deliver in legislation. And that will be the bulk of that will come July 14th. And this will be a big thing for the future of companies in Europe, how much is now achieved with this legislation package.
One of the questions that we asked the companies was, of course, how they interact with decision makers and how active they have been. And of course, I mean, you are in this case at the receiving end of their messages. So I wanted to ask you also, as a decision maker, what is it that you are looking for? You said also previously that you expect to take a central role in some of these initiatives later this year. What is it that you look for when it comes to input from the industry, from the Nordics, when preparing these decisions?
Well, obviously, there's some work to be done already currently before the package comes, trying to affect the Commission to make sure the proposals themselves are as good as possible from different angles. That's before July 14th. But after that, the ball will move to the court of the Parliament and then the Minister Council. So both the ministers and the Parliament for the rest of the year, more or less, some legislation even will take a bit longer to handle. We will go through the details of the proposals. I guess from my side, I think the different industrial sectors have been rather active with the European Parliament and also towards me, since I work with the Greens coordinator with industrial issues. I handle a lot of the questions and meeting requests from industries and other sectors of the economy. I think that the main tool we need, or the main message we will need now from businesses, is that we know the overall goals that we want to achieve. We know already some of the methods also that we want to achieve, but we will need more information about what are the best possible means to achieve them. So if there is when it comes to circular economy action plan, if there is some specific targets or norms or guidelines in a specific sector, how would you like them to be seen? For example, textile industry is very much coming in to be also recycling, and recyclability will become big issues in the textile sector. That's a branch, a sector where also consumers expect a lot more action on environmental impact. But the question is, what kind of regulation? So there, I think the companies have knowledge about what would be the best way to promote in a productive way environmental goals and increase the competitiveness of European companies. And I think, for example, we go to steel industry. I think there is a combination of factors ETS pricing, innovation funding for a hydrogen-based economy, for example, and promoting renewables. You will need wind power to produce hydrogen to create carbon neutral steel. These are two elements. And then there's also the question of the future of the free allocation of emission rights within the ETS for companies that are in these sectors. What kind of a combination would you prefer? So more exact information, that's what we need.
Thank you so much, Ville, and I hope that you stay around and hear what the three experts or company representatives will discuss with me in 1 minute, and then we have the chance to hear your comments at the end still, once we have finished. I think the way you answered the last question also illustrates very well the complexity of this issue, namely how all of the different elements of this package have to do with each other. And that's also one of the reasons why it has such a complex influence on the industry today. But we thank you, Ville, for this discussion. And then I hope that I can welcome on stage our three guests. Here they are. That's one of the advantages of doing these events virtually, although I would very much want to be in the same room with all of you today. But at least we can do the logistics parts very quickly and efficiently. And it is my pleasure to welcome you for this next session of discussion. Three guests representing businesses in Sweden and Estonia and Finland, respectively. We have Elisabeth Tang-Ringqvist from Sweden, who is a business angel investor. Then we have from Estonia, Helemai Metsal, who is development director of the Port of Tallinn. And from Finland, we have Jorma Mikkonen, who is senior vice president for public affairs and sustainability at Lassila and Tikanoja. Helemai, you, of course, as I said earlier, are the head of development in the Port of Tallinn. And your perspective is much in sustainable and smart transport, which is, of course, one of the focus areas of this Green Deal. And the Commission is aiming at reducing transport emissions by 90% by 2050. If you look at the results of this survey and also from the point of view of your country, Estonia, what thoughts do you have and how does it look like when seen from transport and logistics side?
Okay, it was very tricky because I saw the result that Estonia was, let's say, it wasn't the best one on that sense. These ambitions are good, actually, and we from Port of Tallinn side are dealing with everyday work with that and trying to, let's say, educate our partners as well in that field. But yes, it is hard because in Estonia still people are, let's say, a little bit skeptical about those goals because they haven't, let's say, have this kind of mindset already to be more green in a way. And these opportunities, what EU will give with this Green Deal, they haven't even maybe considering those yet. But I think one role what Port of Tallinn already has among their stakeholders is to be the link between those opportunities and showing the example and good partnership, while the businesses which are more smaller ones maybe are not able to make those goals realized, but together we can be more stronger with that.
That's at least a very positive answer.
Yes.
And as I said, this was not a competition, so the idea is more to hear a bit, because I think it's interesting to hear not only from country perspective, but also from branch perspective. In some areas, these are topics that have been discussed for a long time. And in some other areas, I think the discussion is only now emerging. So in that sense, it's also interesting to compare.
Yes, it was very strange because... Yeah. Yes, it was strange because in Port of Tallinn I think we have answered to this questionnaire, and it was in our sense it is always everything I think was in line, but I think there is some companies which are not as in line with that deal itself as well. Maybe they don't know the opportunities, maybe they haven't even considered it yet. So that's things we should do more in Estonia, more widely.
Let's hope so. Elizabeth, are you with us now? That's great. I'm not sure if you heard my question from before, but I did introduce you, and I asked a bit about your reactions to the results, particularly from the point of your sector, namely investment and banking, and how much focus is there on sustainability already? Taxonomy was already mentioned by Ville in the results, but of course there are other issues as well that influence investors when looking at sustainable alternatives. So, how important is this to you, and what do you think of the Swedish results?
Well, I'm also looking at it from an investor perspective. I think it's pretty much the same whether you're an investor in Finland, Sweden, or elsewhere. The most important things for us are the sustainable industry perspective, and also what's calling the Green Deal, the sustainable mobility. And I think it's here sort of reforming sustainable, smart transportation strategy. And so those are the things that we find extremely important as investors, because we know that that's where we have a lot of sensors and we have a lot of software. So development there will be very strong. And then we have, of course, as was mentioned before, also the taxonomy, because we know that if we don't have a taxonomy that actually targets the right things when it comes to sustainability, there are a lot of money that's going to waste because they're sort of made up sustainability things. It's sort of crazy to see how many people that are now give lip service on that they're raising funds for or initiatives for sustainability. When you look at it, it's not that much. It's sort of they're tweaking an already existing business model, whereas that's kind of sustainability money in different funds is extremely important to get the sustainable industry and sustainable mobility going. So without getting the taxonomy right and without the investments in the right sectors, we will not have that influx of money that's needed to really, really fast get these both sort of corporate ventures, like inside big corporations, that they dare to finally do a lot of innovation internally, which Nordic countries are really bad at when you look at when you compare them to sort of in the US, but also to have new money to areas where we can do a little bit. If I'm really so a bit provocative, we could use some less money on gaming and we can use some more money into sustainability.
So at least the way I interpret you is that you see that the banking sector and investments have a big difference to make in here, and that a lot is going to be needed if we can crack this code. I wanted to ask you as a very brief follow-up, because you mentioned the US already. Do you see a big difference between the EU or Europe in this sense and the rest of the world? Because that's also one of the topics related to taxonomy. People say, why should Europe be doing this when nobody else is, and we're only harming ourselves by focusing too much on this. What's your take on that one?
I should confess that I don't know all the details in the taxonomy, but what I do know is that there's so many. What I see from an investor perspective, there are much more things going on when it comes to sustainability in the US. They move really fast last 24 months, and when they move sort of with force and fast. So we've been doing this for 10 years, sort of looking at different sustainability investments, and when it comes to, and also when I talk about sustainability investment, is of course, it's not impact no money, but it's sustainability, impact, and making money, and then we have a history in the Nordics that sort of the industrial, like our big industries, they have been doing a little bit of what you call venture, so corporate venture, when you sort of take out some people and money and you sort of give them the moonshot challenges internally, because a lot of knowledge is of course within our old industries. And when they can understand how they can sort of leverage their knowledge with digitalization, others, and other materials and dare to experiment. And that's what I see much more going on in the US. That's been vital to a number of companies in the US actually be doing success.
So you see that US, although they might be moving a bit later, then they'll catch up very fast, and we need to be very aware of what's happening in there. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, on the frontline corporates, that's what they do. Then as a country, I don't think we should make any comparison whatsoever.
Jorma, you of course represent Lassila & Tikanoja, a company that, according to its business slogan, wants to make circular economy a reality. And I wanted to ask you not only how you evaluate the results from the Finnish point of view, but if you look at the goals of the Green Deal and the solutions that you know are at hand, what would be your advice as next steps? What tools would you consider most important if we really want to make circular economy a reality?
From my perspective, it was kind of good to see that 96% of the companies are taking active role in climate issues, which is very good result, and also only 4% of us see Green Deal as a threat. So that, for me, that promises very good green transition possibility. But in our point of view, companies like us, so we are active in recycling sector and renewables. This companies like us, this Green Deal package and Fit 55, they are both huge business opportunities. I mean, according EU, 50% of all emissions and 90% of biodiversity loss is due to raw materials use and processing. So this is the area where we are playing a very critical role, mitigating these impacts of our customers. And just to give you a few figures, EU has estimated that the circular economy added value potential is roughly 2 trillion euros by 2030, 700,000 new jobs, of which 600,000 in recycling sector. So that's a very good reason why we are very active promoting this green transition and see this as a big opportunity.
That sounds very promising. Helle, and Elisabeth, what do you think? Jorma is talking about big business opportunities in your respective branches. How does the future look like? And do you think that as Nordic companies that there is something that you particularly can give, or when it comes to offering good solutions in the future? What are the biggest growth opportunities that you see with this package?
May I start? Yes.
Yes.
At last week there was a European Seaport Conference yearly, and there was a very lovely saying about that opportunities. Actually, turning the climate threat into an opportunity, and that is actually there is a big opportunity as well to be not threatened, but be having new opportunities in port businesses as well, as ports are like connectors of countries, products and people, and we can be climate leadership as well. So it's big opportunities, and not like stacking on the old-fashioned ways, and find new solutions and new ways to go forward. But of course, it means that it has to be done not balanced way, in a way. Yes.
Yeah, will the consumers be ready to pay for that as well? That's of course
Yes.
one of the big questions.
Yes.
Elisabeth.
No, I think that when we can get we have great collaboration between I will say an great emerging collaboration between large companies and small companies, also ventures. And I think that the benefit that we have is that we have a very tight society when it comes to policymakers, big companies, and venture. And we should nourish that because that's when we can move fast. And that is a difference between a lot of other countries where you have it's difficult to get to the CEO level. And if I compare to where we have an advantage, and I listen to when I talk to companies on the West Coast or in the Silicon Valley, they would say that, wow, we have CEO access in this accelerator. Whereas we would have that, pretty normal that you have the CEO wanting to come to that local accelerator, giving a speech, and you can come up to the person, have a coffee, and that's unheard of. And I think that is the dynamic that we should really, really use. Especially, and why, you could say that that's important in all areas. In this area, it's because there's a lot of uncertainty. We don't really know. And we have to explore, and we also have to embrace failure, because if there is a CEO sitting there and say, well, we invested in 20 companies, we know that 20 of them are going to be bankrupt. Not going to be a good idea. Stock market's going to say that's not what we expected. In the outset, that's how we had to think about it. It will be ideas and initiatives that will not be profitable or have better fruits than we thought. So we'll almost also need a mindset of exploration to do this.
Do you think, and this is perhaps a question to all of you, that Ville was in the beginning saying that the best thing companies can do is to help decision makers find the practical solutions. So find the way to reach the goals that they set on a political level. Do you think that businesses in the Nordics are good in doing this? And do you think perhaps that the Nordic governments also could do something together if we would have good solutions? Or how's your feeling from your contacts and from your daily work? Jorma, at least you sit and nod.
Yeah, this is a very important question. So green transition is happening anyways. So the big question is, which is Finland's path, green growth or adaptation? And there are both scenarios are possible. In the worst case scenario, Finland could be European carbon sink and natural reserve. And in the best scenario, it opens as a window to grow leading player in the field of circular economy and energy transition. So from my point of view, therefore the key issue is how this transition should be led in the country level. And this is a very big pressure to the authorities. I'm sure that the regulation is supporting the green transition, but how do we implement it? The way we do it, it is very critical for the companies.
Yes, Elisabeth.
I was thinking that so speed is everything, obviously. We are only in 2021, and the Green Deal is until the first part is 2030, and we need to have, I think, maybe in each country, sort of that board or whatever it is, sort of where it's easy to solve problems, because when you solve new problems, you always get into sort of that's not really this and that governmental field. Different agencies having the different responsibilities. When it comes to, I can take an example, that is fintech. So in fintech, a lot of companies went to the Financial Regulatory Authority, and in some countries they used sandboxing. So UK was really good in having, so okay, you're solving a problem that is a bit in a new way. It doesn't really, our old rules and regulation doesn't really apply. We don't even know how to look at this. But then they said, well, let's make a sandbox when we can try it out and see exactly where you hit the roof or whatever it is. And then it's sort of a government has sort of a structure for how to solve when there is uncertainty. And I don't know where, but I probably know that there's going to be areas when it comes to batteries, when it comes to different materials and other things, that there's going to be new types of regulation. I mean, and this is now maybe about just talking about a very small part of the Green Deal, which is sort of the innovation and in industry and mobility, and there are a number of other things. But for this specific area, I think that's the countries that can solve this the fastest. That's very good. And also have, I mean, as a Nordic market, we have a fantastic opportunity also to work across industries.
Helema, you're nodding.
Yes, I think in the governmental levels, the cooperation should be good as well, and communication as well. So then we are stronger as a region as well.
Absolutely. I think this has been an extremely delightful discussion, and if there are positive takeaways, then at least there's no lack of enthusiasm and solutions. And also, I kind of liked, Jorma, the way you put it, that for the member states, it's up to each and every one of them, if I quote you a bit, to decide whether they want to just adapt and see what is coming from the European level, or whether they want to be those who shape the coming results and take an active part in actually working with them. I think this could be an excellent point in inviting MEP Ville Niinistö to our discussion again, to hear what thoughts he might have after listening to your comments. Whether that's it. Hello again. What did you think of the discussion and this idea of, I mean, if you put it with Finnish words, do we want to be the carbon repository, or do we want to be an innovation leader? And how do we best make that choice?
Yeah, well, I think I have two takeaways actually from that discussion. What Elisabeth said in the beginning, I also have a perspective to what happens in the global field, so I want to say that first. 10 years ago, when I was Minister of the Environment for Finland and going to global climate meetings, the industries and the businesses were mostly against ambitious climate goals, and there was very little movement in the private sector, so it was very publicly led. And now, if you look around, there is a huge movement from dirty businesses, oil-based businesses, to CO2 neutral technologies, and this is happening already with investors moving. So, if you think about the oil sector, most companies have serious emission reduction targets, and they're trying to move away from fossil assets. And even Exxon, one of the last ones who tried to stay, in the oil business, now they have had an internal half takeover and new board members that are pushing for a different strategy. And this is happening in the US. And if I look at what happens in the US with Biden administration, you get trillions of US dollars invested into green infrastructure and green energy solutions. So my message actually is that US and China with their stimulus packages are moving very, very fast. So it's not anymore a question about whether we as Europe are too much ahead. We are not ahead anymore in many sectors, but we still can be. So I think that is very much the how we can make reality our visions about carbon neutrality. And now coming back to what Jorma said, I think the question now is that, we shouldn't be against ambitious targets. We should not use our energy as companies or member states when we go to Brussels to say that don't do this, that is too much, because that will kind of like just take away the momentum from Europe to invest into new green solutions. What we should do is to say, in our sector, what we think that the public sector should do to enhance productivity and movement to new solutions, we think that these solutions are the best ones. So I think that is the approach, and the positive message from the European Parliament and the Commission is that all political groups, including my own, Greens, some people in the past thought that Greens don't understand industry, but if you look at Germany, the Greens are the ones who are speaking most for industrial reform and industrial jobs, but they are coming from electrifying the car pool and these kind of solutions. So there is a big movement in political decision makers also to understand that where to invest in public infrastructure and public investment to best support this transition. So this is the kind of dialogue we need in order not just to focus on reducing emissions, but also building knowledge and technologies that reduce emissions. So we get both, and then we get the jobs and competitiveness as well. So that is very much what I think we should try to do. But if we are kind of like still hesitant about this transition, then it's just the others. It's Chinese and US who do get the markets, who have the technologies. So it's not anymore the question whether this green reform and green industrial revolution happens. It will happen. We know it will happen. But it's just whether we are doing it or somebody else is doing it.
I think you're absolutely right. And you referred to also in the beginning of your answer to recovery. And I think one of the crucial issues is, of course, now how we in member states individually and at European level use this recovery money, which has been put also to Europe's exposure to get out of this crisis. And are we able to invest it wisely so that we can compete with China and the US also in the future? But thank you very much for joining us today, both to you and our experts. This has been a pleasure from my side to discuss with you, and I would want to pass you on still to my colleague Lauri back in Helsinki, because I think he has a few things he wants to share with you to close us off. But from my side, thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you very much indeed, Lotta, Ville, and our company experts. It's been personally quite exciting, and as Lotta put it, you can feel the sense of enthusiasm that there's most certainly there isn't a lack of enthusiasm, and that's, I think, very important to keep in mind as we come closer to the publication of the Commission proposal, and then the actual nitty-gritty work begins. Because as most of us know, when we start talking about details, well, the devil does lie in the details, but oftentimes we do forget the big picture. And I'm sure that there will be, because it's a fundamental change in our societies and in our industries that we're talking about here, there will be many details to be fought over by companies, interest groups, and the co-legislators in the autumn. For me, I'm quite convinced that the companies in the new Nordic region are quite well equipped to deal with the change. And as Lotta referred also, it's not a competition between the countries, especially our survey here was and is not a competition between the countries, but an effort to understand from one perspective where Milton's home countries, the new Nordic countries, are. As the negotiations move on, we of course in Tallinn, Helsinki, Stockholm and Brussels will be more than happy to help if there's any way that we as Team Milton can help you. The next Miltton Futures discussion will be held before the summer break already. Wait a second, on June 15th, on Tuesday morning after the Finnish municipal election, and we'll concentrate on the outcome of that election. That will be held in Finnish, which comes as no surprise to any of you. Hope that it has been useful. Feel free to send any feedback, questions, comments, and ideas for further Miltton Futures discussions. With these words, thanks a lot and have a good week.